You know that person who will never admit to having a doubt or a fear. That person who will never admit to feeling a bit down occasionally. That person who will never own up to having sinned in thought, word, or deed. Yeah, we've probably all met that person. But it's easy to feel intimidated by them because then we look at our own lives with all our doubts and fears, our low days, and our many sins, and we begin to wonder, well, where do we go wrong? Why can't I be like that? That is exactly why the Psalms have been a firm favourite of Christians throughout the years, because there is no pretence in the Psalms, no putting on a show to impress others. The Psalms are the place for reality. The writers of the Psalms were not afraid to express their true feelings. They weren't afraid to admit their doubts and their fears. They freely expressed both joy and sorrow. They spoke about the good days and the bad days, and they openly admitted and confessed their sins. So all in all, in the Psalms we find the full range of human experience and feelings, and through them we learn what it is to live an authentic Christian life, a life of honesty with God, with ourselves, and with others. I will just take one example today from Psalm 94. We don't know who the author of this psalm is, but listen to what he says here in verses 18 and 19. When I said, my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought joy to my soul. These are words of personal testimony in the midst of this psalm. We're not sure exactly what the writer was experiencing, but it seems to have been some kind of a confrontation with the wicked, and he has felt pretty alone and overwhelmed by it all. But looking back now, this is his testimony. He's admitting that he was slipping. His foot was slipping. The situation, whatever it was that he was facing, he felt it was too much for him. His faith was wavering. He was losing sight of God's love. He was losing his grip on God's love, God's purpose, God's faithfulness, God's involvement in his life and his world. Maybe today you're facing some situation in your life. It might be a time of great trial and testing, and you just feel like you're losing your grip on God. You can't go on. Where is God in all of this? Or maybe you're just looking at this world and wondering where God is in it all. I want to encourage you today to be like this psalmist, to be honest with God, to tell him that your foot is slipping, that your faith is wavering, because it's when we are honest about where we truly are, then we can experience his love supporting us. This was the experience of the psalmist here, and it can be your experience if you're willing to be honest with God and with yourself. Then the psalmist was willing to admit to great anxiety in his mind and heart. I know many Christians who are plagued by anxiety, but sometimes admitting it seems to be such a failure. They know, oh, we're not supposed to worry as Christians. The Bible, Jesus tells us not to worry. So admitting to anxiety is a big step. But again, the Psalms to the rescue, because we see that admitting honesty is the first step. Honesty is always the first step. The psalmist admits to great anxiety within, and then he testifies that God's consolation brought joy to his soul. Today, I encourage you to be honest with God. Tell him how you're feeling and allow him to bring you his comfort, his solace, and his support. If you try to cover up how you feel, if we spend our lives hiding from what is really going on in our hearts, we will always be intimidated by those people who never seem to have a doubt or a fear. But when we are honest with ourselves and with God, we become those people who have a testimony to tell. People who aren't claiming to be perfect or have it all together, but people who aren't afraid to say that in our slipping, in our doubting, in our anxiety, in our failure, we come to God and he supports us. He comforts us, he consoles us, and he brings us great joy. You know what? It isn't about how great we are. It's all about how great he is.